Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have ourselves a little bit of a plot twist. Well, plot twist to me. This might not be such a twist to a lot of people out there, but I'm a little surprised by this, and even with what had happened this preseason, I'm a little surprised by this. So, the other day, Seahawks Maven posted an article from Matty F. Brown talking about why Kyle Fuller was likely to take the starting job at center from Ethan Pocic. I saw the article, but I wasn't really sure if I bought it. Well, Pete Carroll made some comments earlier today that basically confirmed it. It's not a guarantee yet, but I would say, based off Carroll's comments, 95% sure that Kyle Fuller will be starting at center for the Seahawks in week one against the Colts. So basically, I have to cop to not even thinking that Kyle Fuller was going to make the active roster. I thought he was going to be a practice squatter. Part of that was because I wanted him to be a practice squatter, but I certainly didn't expect him to be a starter, even if he managed to make the 53 man. So, a little bit of a plot twist, and we got to talk about this one a little bit. So, first, let's go over to the chart. Ethan Pocic. I originally had Fuller on the practice squad. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. But now we actually have to go Kyle Fuller as a starter and Ethan Pocic as the backup. So, as for how this happened, it's pretty obvious, right? Pocic didn't really get to play very much during camp and preseason because he was injured, and Kyle Fuller actually was able to practice and play. So Fuller kind of won the job by default almost. Now, they often say that you shouldn't lose your job to injury in the NFL. Like, it's not common that a player will get injured and then another player will permanently take their starting job. But that seems to be kind of what happened here. Now, the other side of that is that it was not Posic's starting job to begin with necessarily because he didn't play very well in the second half last year. So, regardless, this is how things look right now. Fuller starting, Pocic backing him up. Okay, so let's talk about Kyle Fuller a little bit here because usually when the Seahawks make a decision or make a move or basically do anything that isn't the completely obvious thing to do, I try to balance it out a little bit. I try to present positives and negatives. I try to present both sides of things. And often when talking about Seahawks decisions, I'm either almost totally positive about it. Things like signing Gerald Everett, which I wanted to do. Things like trading for Gabe Jackson, which I wanted to do. Or I tried to do like pros and cons with like Tyler Lockett, with the Tyler Lockett extension and re-signing Benson Mayowa and things like that. But this one, I don't like it. I don't like this. I really don't like it. And it's possible that this is just an extension of the fact that there was no good option. But I don't see how this is even the best option of the options we had. So, Kyle Fuller, he's 27 years old, 27 and a half, so he's not young anymore. 6'5", 320, so he's bigger than your average center, I suppose, for whatever you want to value that. Seventh round pick of Houston in 2017, played college at Baylor, and his NFL experience to date is 2017, he played 9 games for Houston, started 2 of them. 2018, he played a tiny bit for Washington. And then in 2020, he played 9 games at center for the Seahawks, starting 1 game. So not a lot of NFL experience. He's played in 20 games, but a lot of his experience so far came in garbage time and special teams, injury replacement, stuff like that. He has 3 actual starts in the NFL. And I can't speak to exactly what he did when he was on Houston or Washington, but I know here he was not particularly good. He started 1 game, and I don't think it went terribly well. Although it wasn't a complete disaster, that should not be the minimum expectation for a player in the NFL. So, PFF paints an even uglier picture than that. Kyle Fuller's PFF grade for 2020, which was last year for the Seahawks, 78 snaps, so it's a small sample size, but 32.2. That marks him as a player who does not even belong in the NFL, much less starting. Okay, jump back to 2018 with Washington. Only 56 snaps, 37. Again, a grade that would indicate pretty strongly that he does not belong in the NFL. And then 2017, his rookie year. Actually, the best he's ever done, but still sub 50. 89 snaps played on offense, below 50 PFF grade. So this is not a player who has any kind of a positive track record. So if things don't work out with Fuller, and we may find out very quickly that things are not going to work out with Fuller, the options to replace him are as follows. You can just put Pocic back in, and whatever you think of Pocic, whatever little you think of him, he played at a level last year that even with the second half of the season was much better than anything Fuller has shown me so far in his career. You can put Pocic there. You can move Damian Lewis over to center, and then bump somebody like Phil Haynes over to left guard, who I actually bumped back to the practice squad now, which kind of made me sad to do, but got to do it. Or you could bump Jordan Simmons up to left guard, or Jamarco Jones, or whatever. Those are your options. And then you have basically Pierre Lestage and Brad Lundblade, which are not really real options at all. So the in-house options for replacing Kyle Fuller, if this does not work out, and I kind of suspect it won't, are relatively slim. Pocic is not a terrible idea. Damian Lewis is not a terrible idea. Both those guys could bump over to center and probably do a pretty good job. And we could probably give put a decent player at left guard. We have some decent options there. Phil Haynes, Jamarco Jones, Jordan Simmons, chief among them. So there are some passable in-house options, because I'm going to go ahead and put myself out there now and say I don't think this Kyle Fuller thing is going to work. He is young enough and inexperienced enough to where he could suddenly become a much better player, but I just don't think it's very likely. I feel like we would have seen something last year, and we really didn't. As mediocre as Pocic was, he was clearly better than Fuller as near as I could tell. So, yeah, the only other option than what I just laid out would be to go to the free agency list. And I have a feeling we're going to become very familiar with this list of players as the season starts, because we're going to be making weekly stops at the wishing fountain and throwing our pennies in and hoping that we bring in a center who's better than Kyle Fuller if we feel like we can't replace him in-house. So the big, glaring, obvious option is Austin Reiter, formerly of Kansas City, still a free agent. I don't know why he's still a free agent. Spotrac actually expected he would get like $11 million a year, which is obviously not going to happen now. But he is far and away the best option to get, and I believe at this point he would be relatively cheap. Other options include trying to get Mike Pouncey out of retirement or semi-retirement or whatever. Spencer Pulley, Ben Garland, Tyler Shatley, AQ Shipley. These are all very much replacement level guys, so not in love with any of that. So to me, if you want to find somebody in free agency, it's all about Austin Reiter or trying to get Mike Pouncey out of his retirement. Now, the mitigating factor here is you might be able to get by with one weak spot on the offensive line. And you could at least very reasonably argue that that's what we have right now. Dwayne Brown, if he's out there, and again, that's an if right now, but assuming that he is out there, is still a very good left tackle. Brandon Shell had a good year last year. He seems at least like a capable starter. He might not be great or anything. Maybe he's not even really good, but he's decent, workable for sure. Damian Lewis had a great rookie year, and I think he's going to build on it in big ways this year, and Gabe Jackson's a good player too. So the question is, can you get by with 4 good or better offensive linemen and then 1 stiff? Now, it's the center position, so the center has a priorities on top of just blocking. He has to call out schemes. He has to snap the ball. He has to do a lot of things in terms of how the offensive line plays. He has to do a lot of the play calling for the offensive line in a way. So if Fuller's able to handle that part of it, but then isn't a very good blocker, maybe we can work with that. Maybe we feel like we can find a way to run it with four good or better offensive linemen, and then we'll just work around the one stiff. It's kind of like a basketball team that has one player who can't play defense, like the Spurs back in the day with Tony Parker. He couldn't play defense, but everyone else they had in that lineup could. Bruce Bowen, Tim Duncan, Nazir Mohammed, I think at one point they had starting at center, and Manu Ginobili, or that was their crunch time group. Four of those guys were really good defensive players. One guy wasn't, but they could always hide him. Can we hide Kyle Fuller? I mean, I know that I'm speaking from a place of assuming that he's not going to be good, but I can do nothing else at this point, honestly, because I understand that he won the starting job, but it was kind of by default because Pocic wasn't able to practice, which, I mean, that's always the Pocic problem, right? He's not very durable, but yeah, lot to take in about this one. Let me know what you guys think down below about this decision. Once again, Kyle Fuller looks like he's going to be starting at center for the start of the 2021 NFL season for the Seahawks. Pocic probably backing him up. So the decision to re-sign Pocic, which was questionable at the time, now becomes kind of bad because re-signing Pocic may have stopped us from getting somebody else who would have actually been able to win the starting job at center. But yeah, I'm not a fan of this, not a fan of Fuller. I do think Pocic is better, honestly, and it wouldn't surprise me if Pocic took the job back pretty quickly, as much as Pocic is obviously not particularly good either. All right, let me know down below. Peace out, go Hawks. We'll post more videos later if something happens, but that's what I got. Go Hawks.